Liam stood at the edge of the shooting range behind the royal compound, where dust hung lightly in the air, and metal targets waited in long silent rows. The morning was calm but filled with quiet noise from guards talking, loading rifles, and joking with each other. This place was meant for practice, but for many it felt like a stage where skill and pride were shown. Liam wore the same uniform as everyone else, yet he felt separate, as he always did. He was a palace guard assigned mostly to gates and halls where nothing ever happened. Many guards believed that work like that made a man slow and soft. Liam did not argue with anyone because he had learned long ago that silence often said more than words. He checked his rifle carefully with steady hands that never rushed or shook. His face was calm and showed no emotion, as if his thoughts were far away from the noise around him. A group of guards nearby noticed him and began whispering with quiet laughs. One said that Liam probably never fired more than a few shots in his life. Another said palace walls were safer than real training grounds. Their voices were not low enough to hide their jokes, but Liam did not turn his head. He focused on the weight of the rifle and the feel of the ground beneath his boots. The range instructor Mark walked forward and called everyone to line up. Mark was known for his loud voice and sharp words, and he enjoyed pushing guards to see who broke under pressure. He explained the test in clear terms and said each man would take 10 shots at 100 meters. The best score would earn respect for the day, and the worst would be remembered with laughter. The guards reacted with excitement, and some slapped each other on the shoulders. When Mark's eyes landed on Liam, he paused for a moment and gave a small smile that carried doubt rather than kindness. He told Liam to step up as well because everyone was equal on the range. A few guards laughed openly now, and did not bother to hide it. Liam nodded once and said yes sir in a low steady voice. As the first guards began shooting, the sound echoed across the range, and metal rang again and again. Some shots were good and some were not, and each result was met with cheers or teasing. Liam watched quietly and waited for his turn without shifting his stance. When his name was called, the laughter returned, and someone warned him not to miss the target completely. Liam moved forward and lay down on the mat with controlled movements that seemed almost slow. He positioned the rifle with care and rested it as if it belonged there. His breathing changed and became deep, and even as the world around him seemed to fade away. Mark raised his hand and gave the signal to begin. Liam fired his first shot, and the sound was sharp and clean. The bullet struck the center of the target, and a few guards went silent. Liam did not look up and adjusted only slightly before firing again. The second shot landed almost in the same place, and the target barely showed 2 marks. The range grew quieter as the shots continued. By the 5th shot, the laughter had fully stopped, and only the sound of breathing and distant wind could be heard. Liam's face remained calm and focused as if nothing around him mattered. He finished all 10 shots with the same steady rhythm and then slowly stood up. Mark walked forward to check the target, and his confident expression slowly changed. He leaned closer and then straightened again, as if unsure of what he was seeing. He called out the result and said the grouping was perfect. The guards stared in disbelief, and some shifted their feet while others looked away. One guard said it must have been luck, while another tried to laugh but failed. Liam stepped back and prepared to leave the line as if the result meant nothing to him. Mark stopped him and asked where he learned to shoot like that. Liam paused and answered that it was from before he joined the guard. He said nothing more and offered no story to satisfy curiosity. The silence felt heavy, as if something unseen had entered the range. No one noticed the faint scar near Liam's collar, or the way his eyes scanned the area out of habit. No one understood that his calm was built from years where mistakes were not allowed. To the others he was still just a palace guard who surprised them once. To Liam this was only another quiet morning where the past stayed hidden and the present remained simple. Yet something had changed in the way the guards looked at him, and the way the range felt. The jokes did not return, and the noise felt forced. Liam walked back to his place with the same calm steps he always used. Deep inside he knew this attention could bring trouble because attention always did. He had chosen a quiet life for a reason, and hoped it would remain that way. But the range remembered what it had seen, and so did the men who stood there. The quiet guard was no longer invisible, and the story of who he really was had just begun. The days after the range test felt different for Liam as whispers followed him through the halls of the royal compound. Guards who once ignored him now watched him closely and spoke in lower voices when he passed by. Some tried to act friendly while others stayed distant, unsure of what to think. Liam continued his duties the same way he always had, by standing still at gates, walking quiet corridors, and watching crowds with patient eyes. He did not enjoy attention and hoped the moment at the range would fade with time. Mark, however, did not forget what he saw, and neither did the command staff who reviewed the practice reports. A senior officer named Paul asked Mark about the perfect score and wanted details. Mark admitted he had never seen shooting like that from a palace guard before. Paul nodded slowly and said skill like that usually came from serious training. Liam was called to a small office later that week and asked simple questions about his past. He answered calmly and carefully without offering more than was asked. He said he joined the guard after leaving military service and that he preferred quiet work. The officers exchanged looks that showed curiosity mixed with doubt. Outside, the office guards waited, pretending not to listen, but catching every word when the door opened. Liam returned to his post and felt the weight of their eyes follow him again. That evening the compound hosted a public ceremony, and crowds gathered behind barriers waving flags and cheering. Liam stood near the main gate watching hands, faces and movements like he always did. His posture looked relaxed, but his senses were sharp as they had always been. He noticed small things others missed, like a man standing too still or a bag set down and left behind. Nothing happened that night, but Liam remained alert until the last guest left. The next morning Mark announced another range session, and this time everyone knew Liam would be there. The mood felt tense as guards lined up and pretended to joke while stealing glances his way. Some wanted to see him prove himself again, while others hoped he would fail so things could return to normal. Liam did not change his routine and prepared quietly as before. When his turn came, the range fell silent again, as if everyone was holding breath. He repeated his performance with calm accuracy, and the result matched the first test. There was no laughter this time, only stunned silence and respect mixed with unease. Mark ended the session early and told everyone to stand down. Later that day, Paul approached Liam privately and asked him to walk with him. They moved through a quiet courtyard where stone walls held the echoes of history. Paul spoke carefully and said men with Liam's skill were rare and valuable. He asked if Liam would consider special assignments within the guard. Liam listened without expression and replied that he was happy where he was. Paul seemed surprised and asked why someone with his ability would choose to stand at gates. Liam answered that peace had value and quiet kept the past at rest. Paul did not press further but said the offer would remain open. News of the conversation spread quickly, and some guards grew jealous while others became cautious. A few began testing Liam with small challenges or sharp comments. Liam ignored them and focused on his duty, knowing pride often caused mistakes. One afternoon during patrol, a loud noise startled the crowd near the outer fence and panic began to spread. Guards moved quickly to restore order, but confusion made it harder. Liam stepped forward calmly and guided people with clear gestures and firm words. His voice carried authority without shouting, and the crowd responded by slowing and listening. Within moments the situation settled and order returned. Other guards watched him with surprise as they realized how naturally people followed him. Afterward, Mark spoke to Liam and said leadership came as naturally to him as shooting. Liam simply nodded and returned to his post. That night Liam sat alone during break time and thought about the path that led him here. He remembered training that demanded silence, patience, and control. He remembered learning to wait for the right moment and to disappear when the job was done. He chose the guard because it allowed him to protect without being seen. Now that choice felt threatened by attention he never wanted. The next day, an unmarked vehicle entered the compound and parked near the administrative wing. Two men stepped out dressed plainly, but carrying themselves with purpose. They spoke with Paul behind closed doors and asked about a guard named Liam. Paul answered honestly and shared what little he knew. The men nodded and said nothing more. When Liam was later asked to report to the office, he sensed change in the air. He entered and saw the two men waiting. They studied him closely, as if measuring more than appearance. One finally spoke and said they had been watching from afar. He said skill leaves a mark even when hidden. Liam met his gaze calmly and said he only did his job. The man smiled slightly and replied that some jobs never truly end. Liam understood then that the past he tried to leave behind was not finished with him. He left the office with steady steps, but his mind was alert. The quiet life he built was beginning to shift. The guard no longer saw just a gatekeeper. Something deeper was waking, and events were moving toward him. What Liam did next would decide whether he stayed in the shadows or was pulled back into a world he once mastered. Liam felt the weight of attention grow heavier in the days after the meeting with the two strangers, as if the air around him had changed. Guards no longer joked around him, and even officers watched him with careful eyes. He continued his duties with the same calm focus and kept his movements simple and precise. Inside he remained alert because experience taught him that change often arrived quietly before it struck. One morning Paul called Liam again and spoke in a measured tone about increased security concerns around the royal compound. He said intelligence suggested a possible risk during an upcoming public appearance. Liam listened without reaction and asked what was needed. Paul hesitated and then said he wanted Liam closer to the event team rather than at the gates. Liam agreed because protection was still protection no matter the position. Preparations began and the compound filled with activity as routes were checked and positions assigned. Liam studied maps and watched rehearsals, noting weak points others overlooked. He suggested small adjustments in placement and timing that improved flow and safety. At first some officers questioned him, but when his ideas worked they stopped arguing. The day of the event arrived with clear skies and large crowds. Music played and banners waved as people gathered with excitement. Liam took his place on an elevated position that gave a wide view of the area. He blended into the structure around him as he always had and watched quietly. His breathing slowed and his focus narrowed as training returned without effort. He scanned faces, movements and patterns and noticed a man near the edge of the crowd who did not match the energy around him. The man stood still and kept his eyes fixed forward without reacting to the noise. Liam observed his posture and the way his hands stayed hidden. He did not panic or rush because patience was part of control. He adjusted his position slightly and continued watching. Moments later, he saw another detail that confirmed his concern when the man shifted and revealed an object that did not belong. Liam spoke calmly into his radio and shared clear instructions without raising alarm. Guards moved according to his guidance and gently redirected people nearby. The man noticed the change and began to step away, but Liam was already prepared. He guided the response so smoothly that the crowd barely sensed anything unusual. The situation resolved without chaos and the event continued as planned. Afterward, officers gathered and quietly discussed what happened. Paul approached Liam with clear respect and said his awareness prevented a serious problem. Liam nodded and said the team worked well together. Word spread quickly, and even those who doubted him before now listened closely. Later that evening, Liam stood alone and watched the compound return to normal. He felt the familiar mix of relief and tension that came after responsibility. The two strangers returned again and requested a private conversation. They thanked Liam for his actions and spoke about the importance of people who could see what others missed. They said the world still needed protectors who worked without praise. Liam listened and asked if they planned to pull him back into their work. One man answered that the choice would always be his, but that situations sometimes choose people. Liam thought about the quiet life he wanted and the duty he never escaped. He asked for time to decide, and the men agreed. Over the next days, Liam noticed how guards treated him with respect rather than humor. Some asked for advice and others simply nodded when passing. Liam helped when asked but avoided standing out. He believed strength did not need display. One afternoon, a young guard approached him and said he wanted to improve his shooting. Liam agreed to help and taught him basics with patience. He focused on breathing, posture, and calm rather than speed. The young guard improved quickly and thanked him sincerely. Liam realized teaching was another way to protect. Yet he also knew that attention could bring new risks. Late one night Paul visited Liam at his post and spoke honestly. He said the compound felt safer with Liam involved and that leadership trusted him deeply. Paul asked again if Liam would accept a formal role with more responsibility. Liam looked out at the quiet grounds and thought about peace. He remembered why he chose this place and why he hid his past. He also remembered moments when skill saved lives. He told Paul he would serve where needed but asked to remain as unseen as possible. Paul agreed and said some guardians worked best in silence. As days passed, Liam balanced this new role carefully by guiding planning while staying out of the spotlight. The strangers kept their distance but remained watchful. Liam sensed that bigger events moved beyond the walls of the compound. He felt ready if needed but hoped it would not come. The calm before him felt fragile and temporary. Liam stood steady knowing that choices made in silence often carried the greatest weight. The final test had not yet arrived, and when it did it would demand everything he had kept hidden. The final days of the season arrived quietly, and with them came the largest public gathering the royal compound had seen in years. Preparations filled every corridor and open space with movement planning and careful checks. Liam moved through it all with calm purpose, offering guidance only when needed and never raising his voice. He spent hours studying routes, timing and crowd flow while others focused on visible strength. The trust placed in him was clear, though rarely spoken aloud. On the morning of the event, the air felt heavy with expectation, and Liam sensed that this day would decide the path ahead. He took his position early and watched as guards settled into their roles. The crowd gathered slowly and then all at once filling the open area with sound and color. Liam let the noise fade from his mind and focused on patterns as he always had. He noticed small shifts in movement and subtle changes in behavior that others ignored. His awareness moved smoothly across the scene like a calm current. At one point a minor delay caused tension near an entry point and voices rose. Liam stepped forward and used simple gestures and clear words to restore order without force. The crowd responded, and the moment passed without trouble. Throughout the event he continued guiding responses quietly through brief messages and signals. Each adjustment reduced pressure before it could grow. Officers followed his direction without question now because results had earned trust. As the main moment of the gathering arrived, Liam sensed a familiar stillness beneath the noise. He scanned carefully and found nothing threatening but remained ready. The event concluded successfully, and applause filled the space. Relief moved through the team as people began to leave. Liam stayed alert until the last barrier opened and the grounds emptied. When silence finally returned, he felt a deep calm settle in his chest. Paul approached him with a rare smile and said the day could not have gone better. He thanked Liam openly and acknowledged his leadership. Liam accepted the words with a nod and said the team worked well together. Later that evening the two strangers appeared one final time and asked to speak with him. They congratulated him and said his actions confirmed everything they believed. They offered him a chance to return to work that required his level of skill and judgment. Liam listened carefully and looked out over the quiet compound. He thought about peace routine and the simple duty of standing watch. He also thought about moments when his presence prevented harm and brought calm. He told them he would not return to a life of constant movement and danger. He said his place was here, protecting quietly and teaching others when needed. The men respected his choice and said that some guardians served best where they stood. They left without pressure and without promises. In the days that followed, life slowly returned to normal. Guards resumed routines and laughter returned to the halls. Yet something had changed in how Liam was seen. He was no longer mocked or ignored, but respected without ceremony. Younger guards sought his advice and officers included him in planning without drawing attention. Liam continued his gate duties and corridor walks with the same steady pace. He trained others quietly, focusing on awareness, patience, and calm. He reminded them that strength came from control rather than noise. Over time, the range became a place of learning rather than pride. Liam watched others improve and felt satisfaction in their growth. He avoided praise and redirected it toward teamwork. The compound grew stronger not because of one man but because many learned to see more clearly. One evening as the sun set behind the walls, Liam stood at his post and felt content. He knew his past no longer needed to define him, and his future could remain steady. The choice he made brought balance between duty and peace. The quiet guard had protected, without revealing, everything he was. In silence he found purpose, and in purpose he found rest. The story of his skill spread only as far as needed, and then stopped. That was how Liam wanted it. He remained watchful, calm and unseen as the world moved safely around him.